Welcome, everybody, to the NFL show, brought to you by Replenishing Care and Technologies. Make sure you check out at 2:30 Eastern Time today. I will have James G. Comerford from Replenishing Care and Technologies in to talk about his PEMF machine, so make sure you check that out at 2:30. I am your co-host for the NFL show, Mike Goodpaster. Right now, I'd like to welcome in my co-host, NFL beat writer Sam Teets. How you doing, Sam?
I'm doing great, Mike. How about you?
I am great also. So yesterday we did part one of our two-part NFL power rankings. We ranked teams 32 through 17. Today we're going 1 through 16, Sam. Who are you going to start off with at number 16?
Yeah, number 16 was kind of close for me. I had two or three teams I thought could have gone here. But I'm actually going to put the Dallas Cowboys at number 16. I think they're a one-dimensional team. They have an offense, but they really don't have any kind of defensive game plan. I love Leighton Vander Esch defensively for them. But other than that, I think their defense is just too thin. I don't think they have enough to handle. I don't think their secondary is talented enough to handle other top offenses. Like I said, they have all the offensive weapons in the world. They just don't have a solid defense.
All right. And, they didn't make the postseason last year. Jason Garrett got fired. They were infinitely more talented in Philadelphia, but the Eagles were a little bit tougher, I think. Dallas is loaded on offense. They have a stout O-line, one of the best running backs in Ezekiel Elliott. A wide receiver corps that added a player many consider the best in the receiver class in 2020 in C.D. Lamb. However, they did suffer significant losses in free agency. And the thing that stands out to me when we talk about the offense and the stout offensive line, there's a sizable hole now in the middle created by the retirement of Travis Frederick.
Yeah, he was really a key part of what they were doing. He's one of the top 3 or 4 centers in the entire NFL. Now, you do have Joe Looney there, who had some starting time when he missed when Travis Frederick missed the full season. You got Tyler Biadasz. I don't know if I'm saying the name right, but they drafted him. He could be a starter even before the year ends. But at the same point, you can't expect any of those guys to actually replace Travis Frederick in terms of his talent, in terms of what he meant to that line. So I think the offensive line will be worse. And I just don't know if they're going to be able to pull it together and put out 10 wins.
Yeah, plus you got the team leader in sacks last year, Robert Quinn, and top cornerback Byron Jones followed trucks filled with money out of town. And everybody who says this is a Super Bowl contender, I don't see it. And I don't see it because of the defensive side. I think offensively they'll be fine. They got Zeke, they got Dak, but defensively they're going to have issues. And I think the offensive line's not going to be as good as what it was either. I don't see how it possibly could be. So I think this is a fringe wild card team at best.
Yeah, they added an extra wild card seed. It probably helps Dallas out a lot. But if you're asking me to pick a division winner, I'm still going with Philadelphia.
Me too, I think. Who do you got at 15, Sam?
Number 15, this is a little bit surprising compared to where they were last year in the playoffs. So I got Tennessee Titans at number 15. I do like Mike Vrabel as a head coach, but just looking at Tennessee, I don't expect Ryan Tannehill to be able to put up the numbers he did last year. He was super efficient. He had a career year. I don't think he can do that over a full 16-game season, so I think he'll take a step back. I like Derrick Henry, but I wonder when eventually all those carries and all those hits are going to come back to haunt him. I think we've seen it before with other running backs in the past. So I'm wondering if he's going to be able to get through a full season without having to deal with any injuries. And I just don't believe they have the super talented players on either sides of the ball to go out there and compete at a high level and win 12 or 13 games.
All right. And, this is the hard part. It's one thing to be successful in the NFL, and it's a lot easier than it is to stay successful. And I think the Titans were able to bring back the offensive stars who spurred last year's postseason run. They re-upped quarterback Ryan Tannehill to use the franchise tag on Derrick Henry. But they lost right tackle Jake Conklin, who signed with the Browns. Veteran cornerback Logan Ryan wasn't retained. Jarrell Casey was traded to the Denver Broncos for what was essentially a salary dump. And Tennessee hopes to have found replacements for Conklin and Ryan by drafting Isaiah Wilson and Christian Fulton, respectively. So those are rookies. We really don't know what we have. I say that you're probably about right where you put them. I do think Mike Vrabel is a very good coach, which does give them a chance to do something. But I don't see how this team got better. They signed guys that they needed to sign, but losing guys like Conklin and Ryan could be huge losses, and Casey.
Yeah, I agree. I think they took a step back just because they're much younger now. They lost a lot of veteran presence in that locker room. And I just don't see, they put on a really good run there in the playoffs. I just don't see them getting back to that point and being able to bottle up that energy and put it back out in the field again. I just don't see that happening 2 years in a row.
All right, who do you got at number 14, Sam?
Number 14, I have the Houston Texans. This is mostly because of Deshaun Watson. If you take Deshaun Watson off that team, and let's say you put Ryan Tannehill on there, you're probably looking at a team closer to 18 to 22 in terms of the rankings. Well, I've got them this high because I believe in Deshaun Watson. I think he's one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. But I think they're lacking a good supporting cast on the offensive side of the ball. I think the offensive line's a huge problem. And even defensively, the defense isn't that great. I think they've got some good pieces, but I don't think they have a complete team.
Yeah, I think that Bill O'Brien has to be on the hot seat here. He spent much of the offseason making one bizarre move after the other, headlined by trading star wideout DeAndre Hopkins to the Arizona Cardinals for a day 2 pick and a injured David Johnson. The Texans then turned around and spent a day 2 pick to bring in Brandon Cooks as Hopkins' replacement. And, I mean, in fantasy football, he would be a failure. In real football, I think he's going to be a failure. And if you look at the moves he's made over the last 3 years, I'm not going to say Bill O'Brien's not a good football coach because I think he is, but I don't think he's very good at being a GM and running an organization. And the only thing that saves them and gets them this high, in my estimation, and I really think they're more like 16 to 20, is Deshaun Watson. Without him, they would be completely lost. Who do you get at 14?
Yeah, number 14, I've got – well, you just did 14. We did 14 was Houston. Number 13 for me, this is a team that I only have at 13 because there are so many question marks. There's a lot of ifs for them. It's the Denver Broncos. Now, I really like what Denver's done. I think if Drew Lock plays slightly better than we did last year when we saw them in a 5-game stretch, I think they could be a team that's in the top 10 easily. But we're relying on a guy who we've only seen play 5 games in his career so far. He went 4-1. I'm not entirely sure what we were going to get from Drew Lock this year, which is why I'm a little hesitant to put Denver higher than 13. I love what they did this offseason, but I haven't seen enough from Drew Lock yet to buy into it.
Well, Drew Lock's what this is all going to come down to, but the Denver defense ranked 12th in 2019. I think they'll be even better this year. They added a pair of former Pro Bowlers on that side of the ball. They acquired Jarrell Casey, A.J. Boye. The offense should be improved as well. The line gets a boost with the addition of free agent Graham Glasgow. Melvin Gordon joins a rushing attack that is already featuring Phillip Lindsay and Royce Freeman. They spent its first 2 picks in the 2020 draft on wideouts, Jerry Jeudy and KJ Hamler. If Locke can build on his late season success, I think Denver could make some real noise in the AFC West. And even if he is just average with this defense, they should be at least in wild card contention, Sam.
Yeah, I expect them to make the playoffs. I think they'll get a wild card at the very least, like you said. But if Drew Lock is playing at a high level, you could win 12 games. Honestly, they're that good of a team. I love what they've done. But again, if he's inconsistent or if he's a bad quarterback, you're looking at a team maybe 8-9 wins.
All right, number 12.
All right, my number 12 is the Indianapolis Colts. I bought into the Colts more over the past couple of weeks than I did initially. I think you can make the case that they're lower than Denver, but I love what Indianapolis has in the backfield and in the offensive line. I don't think you need to ask a lot of Philip Rivers this coming season because you have such a stellar offensive line. You got a loaded backfield, guys like Marlon Mack, Jonathan Taylor, Hines, Jordan Wilkins. You got so many guys back there. And the defense is definitely questionable, but I think they've added some pieces up front to make at least the defensive front a lot tougher than it was in past years.
Yeah, I like the Colts. I think you got them too low here, actually. I mean, they've got a really good offensive line. Phillip Rivers, I don't think will have to throw the ball 40 times a game like he had to in San Diego or L.A., wherever the Chargers were the last few years. They flipped the 13th overall pick to the 49ers for defensive tackle DeForest Buckner. They added Jonathan Taylor, which to me, with Marlon Mack, makes that one of the better backfields in the NFL, Sam.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's really going to be the strength of their unit this year. If you look at what something like Tennessee did last year when they were running the ball a lot more, relying on Derrick Henry, just asking Ryan Tannehill to make a couple plays here and there. I think that's probably what we're going to see from Indianapolis this year. Is we're going to see the running game. Guys are going to get 30 or 40 carries a game in total, and you're going to ask probably Phillip Rivers to throw the ball maybe 20, 25 times. Yeah,
I think it's 75% of a prime Phillip Rivers, and the Colts run away with this division.
I mean, if you look at, I bought into this idea. Originally, I thought that was crazy, but I bought into this idea over the last couple of weeks because you look at what Houston has. Houston doesn't have an offensive line or a running game. Jacksonville's a mess. And I agree at Tennessee. I don't think Tennessee will be the same as they were this past season. So I do think the Colts are actually starting to look like they're going to win the division.
All right, so I always forget what number we're at. What are we, 11 or 12?
We're at number 11. This is probably a controversial pick, and you're probably going to say the Colts should be above them. But I'm taking the Pittsburgh Steelers at number 11.
Go ahead and explain before you think I'm going to track it.
Well, I'm taking Pittsburgh at number 11 because I think if Big Ben is even, let's say, 80 to 85% of what he was in 2018, you finally give him a defense. This is a team that's needed a defense maybe the past 6 or 7 years. Since the Troy Polamalu, James Harrison unit kind of fell apart, they've been lacking a real defense. You finally give them one of the best defenses in the NFL. If you're able to combine that with Big Ben, who's turned average receivers into all-pros and Pro Bowlers in his past, and he, like I said, if he's 80 to 85% of what he was in 2018, I think this is a unit that can win 10 to 12 games.
All right, I can see what you're saying. But I think this goes one of two ways. Either the Steelers return to being an AFC elite or to continue a slide into mediocrity. And I think the team's curve depends entirely on Big Ben. He's got a surgically repaired right elbow. But I think here, Sam, the problem I have is the odds of a 38-year-old quarterback coming back as good or better after injury, coupled with a defense that, I mean, this defense made a ton of impact plays last year and got a lot of scores. If you remember back to last year when we talked about the Bears, my take on why the Bears were going to fall apart last year wasn't just Mitch Trubisky. It's usually after a team gets a high rate of turnovers, it's hard to duplicate that the next year. So I think that on defense, Minkah Fitzpatrick, edge rusher TJ Watt, I think this is one of the 5 best defenses in the NFL. But my question is with Big Ben. So, yeah, I can see if Big Ben comes back and he is 100%, I can see him winning 12 or 13 games. I don't see him being 100%. I don't see the defense doing what they did last year, turnover-wise, takeaway-wise, being able to score. And I still think you have a lack of a running game. I don't think you have great wide receivers, which are not going to help a 38-year-old quarterback either, Sam.
Yeah, I think it's hit or miss with Big Ben. I think the receiver, I'm less concerned about, honestly, the receivers and tight ends because we've seen Ben go out there. And like I said, even if he's 70% of what he was in the past, I still think he'll be good enough to make these guys useful because we've seen him play well with guys like Sammy Coates and Marcus Wheaton as some of his top receivers in the past. So I'm not really concerned about the receivers so much as I am the offensive line in the running game.
All right, where are we at? Number 11?
We just got number 11. We're at number 10. Number 10 for me is the Minnesota Vikings. I think the Vikings – I mean, I've liked the Vikings the last couple of years. I thought they really underachieved the past 2 or 3 seasons. I think they could have done a lot better than what they have. And I just think they lost a lot defensively. I think you gave up 2 or 3 of your top cornerbacks. You still have 2 very good safeties. And you lose Everson Griffin along the defensive line. I just think there's too much they got rid of defensively for them to be the same team this year.
Yeah, I've seen people rank them as high as 5 or 6. I think free agency was especially not kind. It was unkind to them. They lose their top 3 corners. They lose Stephon Diggs. They lose Everson Griffin. The trade did give them a second pick at round 1. LSU's Justin Jefferson, I think, is going to be a better player than Diggs, though. Jeff Gladney also came off the board on the day's first day, to anchor the defensive backfield. I just think there's too many questions in the defensive backfield to really take this team as a Super Bowl contender, but I think they're definitely a playoff team, Sam. Yeah,
I think so. You can definitely, even with a slightly damaged defense, you could go out there and easily win 9 games. So with a 7 seed available in the playoff now, that's a playoff caliber team. I still think they could possibly win 10 games as well, especially if Dalvin Cook stays healthy, because he was huge for them last year. But at the same point, this is not going to be a team that I thought honestly last 2 years, the Vikings could have come out and won 12 or 13 games a year. I don't think they can do that this season.
All right, number 9.
Number 9, I have the Buffalo Bills. And the Buffalo Bills are at number 9 because of Josh Allen. I don't buy in to Josh Allen. And I've been pretty consistent on this the entire time. He's got one of the best arms in the NFL, and he has no idea how to use it. I mean, he can't hit anyone deep. Now we got to add Stephon Diggs to the receiving core that already features John Brown and Cole Beasley. But he's been so wildly inaccurate at times. I just can't believe he's going to go out there and lead this team to be any kind of really Super Bowl contender.
Yeah, and we see this with a lot of teams. I think this is similar to the Chargers situation. Either if you had a quarterback, you would think it's a Super Bowl contender. Now, I think they're a playoff team. I think they probably win the AFC East. I think they added a lot of juice to the front 7. I think Josh Norman was a great low-risk flyer in the secondary. And I think the trade that brought Stephon Diggs to Western New York gives Josh Allen the number one receiver he lacked. But I just think divisional playoff game is probably the ceiling for this team, because I don't think that Josh Allen's ever going to be the kind of guy that can win you a Super Bowl, because he just makes a lot of bad decisions and a lot of bad mistakes, Sam.
Yeah, he's not a great fundamental football player. So to me, I just can't see them getting, like I said, divisional rounds probably the ceiling for them. I can't see them go out there and do much better than that. I mean, honestly, I would say if they end up playing in a wild card game, they'll probably lose the wild card game. I don't think they're going to go out there and be a real beast in the playoffs.
Yeah, because they'll probably be playing the Bengals and they'll go down in that game. Who do you got at number 8, Sam?
Number 8, I got the Philadelphia Eagles. And I think I love the Eagles front office and their coaching staff, and I believe Carson Wentz has been unfairly tortured in the media at times. But there are still concerns here. They've dealt with injuries so much in the last 2 or 3 years that I'm worried the injury bug will continue to strike them. Their receivers are decent but not great. I love Miles Sanders in the backfield. I think he'll be phenomenal. I do worry, even though they add Darius Slay, I am a little bit worried about the defensive backfield as well. So there are some holes in this team, which is why I have them down at down at number 8. I still believe this is a playoff caliber team. I think they're going to win their division. And I think once they make the playoffs, they could really make some noise as long as Carson Wentz stays healthy.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to be better than what they were last year. Jalen Reagor from TCU will help. You got John Hightower of Boise State, who's solid. I still don't understand why they selected Jalen Hurts as high as they did instead of adding a cornerback. I think cornerback, defensive backfield is going to be the issue for the Eagles.
No, I'm there with you entirely. I think Darius Slay was a huge addition for them. I think that was a great, phenomenal move. But at the same point, there are corners Sidney Jones, Avonte Maddox, Nicole Roby-Coleman in the slot. I mean, it's decent, but it's not, like, phenomenal. It's not something that I'm not looking at defensive unit and saying, oh, wow, this is going to really go out there and win them Super Bowl.
All right, who you got at number 8, Sam?
Actually, we just went through number 8. So number 7.
Number 7, Sam.
Number 7, I've got the Green Bay Packers. I think the Packers overachieved last year, going 13-3 and making it to the NFC Championship game. I don't think they'll do the same thing this year, just because they don't have the skilled players around Aaron Rodgers to really maximize his talent at this point in his career. I think Aaron Jones will be good, but I don't think he'll score as many touchdowns as he did last year. I don't think – well, there's always questions with Devontae Adams and his health. He's been injured a couple times in the past few seasons. And the offensive line, you've you replaced your starting right tackle. You brought in Ricky Wagner. I just don't think there's enough there on either side of the ball to be a true, like, a top 5, top 6 team.
They're not a Super Bowl contender. They may be able to win the division, but I don't think they're one of the 3 or 4 best teams there. And I think what we saw last year in the NFC Championship game, they could have addressed a lot to catch up to the 49ers and the elite teams in the NFC, but they decided to go with Utah State's Jordan Love. Now, I think last year's success is not repeatable because a lot of things had to go just right to it. They got to play an easier schedule than most, and they didn't do anything of note to improve their glaring need at wide receiver. Even if you think that the Packers remain the best team in this division, I don't see how you can take them seriously as a Super Bowl contender.
No, I don't think that's why I'm putting them down where they are. I don't think they're going to be one of those teams that you're really expecting to go out there and win the Super Bowl. I think they maybe make it past the first round of the playoffs, but after that, I don't think they're going to go any further.
All right, who you got at number 6, Sam?
At number 6, I've got the Seattle Seahawks. This is most because of Russell Wilson. If you remove Russell Wilson from the equation, I could see them still being a top 10 team, but they'd be much lower than where they are right now. I think Wilson's combination with DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, you got Chris Carson returning from injury, and you've also had Greg Wilson and some rookies to a very deep tight end core. Besides a bad offensive line, this is a pretty good offense. I really like the pieces they have there. I believe Russell Wilson's an MVP caliber player basically every year. My big question still remains defense. The defensive front is all kind of messed up. Even the secondary, there's still some question marks. So Jamal Adams and Quandre Diggs are going to be one of the better defensive back pairings in the league. You also have Shaquille Griffin back there. I think they got better this offseason. I just don't know by how much.
I don't know that they got better, though, because did the offensive line really get improved?
Now, I don't think it's not really offensive line so much the defensive backfield. I think where they got a little bit better.
Yeah, but my problem is this, and we've talked about this before. If you got a team that doesn't have a very good offensive line, the chances of ending up in the Super Bowl are very small.
Yeah, which is why I don't really view the Seahawks a Super Bowl team necessarily. I put them in the same category as the Green Bay Packers in the sense that they are going to be a competitive team. They're going to make the playoffs for sure. They're probably going to win 10 games. But at the same point, if you're asking me in December who's going to be a playoff or a Super Bowl caliber team, probably not Seattle just because they lack pieces on the offensive line, defensive line right now.
Yeah, but the thing Green Bay and Seattle both have in common is Russell Wilson and Aaron Rodgers. And if you just get to the playoffs and one of them goes off, you might be able to make a run and end up in a Super Bowl.
And if that happens, I'm betting on Russell Wilson over Aaron Rodgers.
Me too. Who you got at number 5?
Yeah, number 5, I got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And this is still a situation where we haven't seen them play a game together yet, which is why I have them at number 5. But you just got to think about this. I'm not betting against Tom Brady. I am not taking Tom Brady out of the top 5 in terms of quarterbacks or top 5 in terms of teams just because he's Tom Brady. And every time I bet against Tom Brady in the past, it's always backfired. I think this is one of the most talented offenses in the entire NFL. You've got Chris Godwin, Mike Evans. The backfield's a little bit questionable, but you got a kind of group of guys now you can lean on: LaShawn McCoy, Ronald Jones, and Keyshawn Vaughn. Tight ends: Rob Gronkowski, O.J. Howard, Cameron Brate. It's one of the deepest units in the NFL. The offensive line's not terrific, but it's better than what I think people are giving it credit for. And defensively, you have a phenomenal defensive front.
Yeah, I would think when you look at this team, this is last year's Cleveland Browns. Last year, the Cleveland Browns were kind of the conductors of the offseason hype train. This year, I think it's the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but I think the difference is here, Baker Mayfield or Tom Brady. So I think, and the excitement's not just about Brady and Gronk. I mean, the Bucs have maybe the most imposing trio of pass catchers that exist in the NFL today. You got Shaq Barrett, the 2019 sack king, Jason Pierre-Paul. Tampa traded up to nab one of this year's top tackle prospects in Iowa's Tristan Wirfs. So this is a team that's made the right moves. They're coached by a real football coach in Bruce Arians. They have a real quarterback in Tom Brady. So if Tom Brady has anything left, I think Tampa Bay is definitely a playoff contender and possibly even more.
Yeah, I think they can potentially even win the division. But it's going to be up in the air. Like I said, I haven't seen them all play together yet, so that's why I'm holding them back and kind of keeping them at number 5. But I think the most underrated unit on this entire team is probably the defensive front. I mean, you got Ndamukong Suh there, who's been really productive despite not putting up like phenomenal numbers. He's been really impactful. He helped Vita Vea unlock his ability as a nose tackle this past season. And you got Devin White, who took in the first round this past year. He's going to be a lot improved based on what he did as a rookie. You still have Levante David, who's one of the most underrated players in the entire NFL.
All right, who you got at number 4, Sam?
Yeah, number 4, I got a team also from the NFC South. It's the New Orleans Saints. And I have one spot higher than Tampa Bay just because I've seen them play together for a couple of years, so I kind of know what to expect. They added Emmanuel Sanders in the offseason, so now they have a decent 1-2 punch receiver in him and Michael Thomas. That's what they had. They didn't have that in the past. I think Ted Ginn was the number 2 receiver last year, something like that. So they really didn't have a complimentary piece to Michael Thomas. Now they do. You still have Jared Cook at tight end. You still have Alvin Kamara coming out of the backfield. I think this team is going to rely on what you can get out of Drew Brees, because it looked like Drew Brees faded at points in time last year towards the end of the season. So based on how much he has left, it's going to determine how far this team can go when they reach the playoffs.
All right, I believe this. I believe on paper New Orleans has the most complete team in the NFL. I mean, you had Michael Thomas. Now, on the other side, you got Emmanuel Sanders. You got first-round pick Cesar Ruiz, who gives the Saints ridiculous depth on the interior of the offensive line. Guard to guard, I don't think anybody's better. Outside linebacker Zach Braun will provide more pop for the pass rush. I think safety Von Bell was replaced by a 3-time Pro Bowler and 2-time Super Bowl champion in Malcolm Jenkins. So I think that's possibly an upgrade even though you lost Bell. I think the NFC's loaded in 2020. But to me, when I look at the Saints, I mean, this is a team that I think I would rank higher than number 4 even. The only caveat here is Drew Brees seems to peter out by the time he gets to the playoffs. Does that have something to do with age, or is there something else there?
Yeah, I'm thinking it's a little bit of age at this point. And also, I'm holding them back to number 4 because the running game is decent, but they really don't have a feature back. I know Alvin Kamara gets a lot of credit, but he's never run for over 900 yards in a single season. So it's not like the running game is going to be able to hold out and pull them through the playoffs if Drew Brees starts failing at the end of the year.
Well, I think it could if they would just make up their mind to be a running team. Because with the offensive line, Alvin Kamara is going to be pretty good.
Yeah, I think he actually came out and said that he was dealing with I forget if it was a knee or he was doing some kind of leg injury for most of the past season, so he'll be better this year compared to what he was in 2019.
All right, number 3, Sam.
Number 3, and this is a team that I think I might have put them a little bit too high looking back at it now. I might be able to drop them to number 5 because I think they're not going to perform as well as they did this past year, but it's the San Francisco 49ers. I think that the 49ers did get a little worse this past year when they got rid of Emmanuel Sanders in free agency. I think it was a bit of an upgrade because Joe Steele retired. He was kind of on his last legs. You're bringing Trent Williams, who, if he's been staying healthy and staying fit, I think could be a bit of an upgrade. And defensively, you lose DeForest Buckner and you replace him with Javon Kinlaw. That's a little bit of a step back. At the same point, you still got guys like Nick Bosa. You still got George Kittle. I still think you can run the ball fairly well with Raheem Mostert and Tevin Coleman. So I'm not counting this team out, but I don't expect they'll be as dominant as they were this past year.
Well, I will say this, as I always do, this team will not win a Super Bowl as long as Kyle Shanahan is the coach because he chokes at the end of games. He didn't have any faith in Jimmy Garoppolo last year at the end of the season. I think it had a lot to do with blowing that lead. Javon Kinlaw is not DeForest Buckner. Brandon Ayuk is not Emmanuel Sanders. Now, they did pick up Trent Williams, which makes the offensive lineup a little bit better at left tackle. And when you look at it, they seem primed to make another run. But Trent Williams, Brandon Ayuk, these are guys that have to have huge years, Javon Kinlaw, to be able to replace them. And I think when people look at it and say, well, they upgraded because they got these guys, I mean, you're going with a lot of guys here that have never really proven anything like Ayuk and Kinlaw when you had proven guys in Buckner and Sanders.
Yeah, which is why I'm thinking, honestly, I might put them too high looking back at now. I could probably drop them to 5 or 6. But I still think a lot of that core team is there. I think we'll actually see Nick Bosa be better this year than what he was this past season. And that's a scary thought because he was already really good as a rookie.
All right, who you got at number 2?
Number 2 had the Baltimore Ravens. And this is also a team that has kind of a huge question mark here, and that's Lamar Jackson. I'm going to say he's going to be semi-consistent. He won't perform like he did this past year, but he'll still be consistent enough to win them games. And honestly, even if he isn't what he was this past season, he doesn't necessarily have to be because you have Mark Ingram in the backfield. The offensive line is still solid, though it's not as good as it was last year. And your defense unit got even better. I mean, your defense is so dominant right now. You got Derek Wolfe, Brandon Williams, and Calais Campbell up front. You've added Patrick Queen and Malik Harrison in the draft. You kept Matt Judon around. And your secondary features 2 first-team All-Pros in Marcus Peters and Marlon Humphrey. And you have Earl Thomas and Chuck Clark as your safeties. I mean, it's a dominant defensive unit. I don't think you necessarily need Lamar Jackson to be an MVP, and you can still go out there and win 14 or 12 games.
No, in an offense, you added J.K. Dobbins from Ohio State, and then they brought in a blazing fast wide receiver around later in Texas's Devin Duvernay. So they've added speed. They're going to be able to be more successful running the ball. They're going to be better on defense. And to me, I would have them at 2 also. And the difference between the number 1 team and the number 2 team is Patrick Mahomes is better than Lamar Jackson. And anybody that wants to say that Lamar Jackson is better than Patrick Mahomes, you're out of your mind. We watched Patrick Mahomes win a Super Bowl on a 10-point comeback. I mean, they're down 10 in the fourth quarter. The difference in these 2 teams is Mahomes, because if you take the quarterbacks out of the equation here, Baltimore's a lot better than Kansas City.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Baltimore has a much better supporting cast, but you put Patrick Mahomes in there, and you look at the way the offense is built for him to succeed. I mean, you already have a pretty decent offensive line with guys like Mitchell Schwartz at right tackle, who is highly underrated, Eric Fisher at left tackle, and then you've got guys like Clyde Edwards-Helaire coming out of the backfield, Sammy Watkins, Tyreek Hill, Nicole Hardman, Travis Kelce. Your pass catchers are absolutely some of the fastest in the entire NFL. And this is a team that's built specifically for Patrick Mahomes, even defensively. The defense came through in the Super Bowl this past year. Guys like Chris Jones, Frank Clark, and Tyrann Mathieu really pulled through. And Juan Thornhill's coming back. He'll be even better when he's healthy. So I think this defensive unit is not getting necessarily the respect it deserves, but at the same point, it's not on the same level as Baltimore's.
All right. Number 1, I assume, is the Kansas City Chiefs.
Yeah, absolutely. There's no other way to go with. There's no way to go with number 1. It has to be Kansas City.
Yeah, and the thing to me is you had a guy like Clyde Edwards-Helaire with the last pick of the first round. That's just another weapon. That's a weapon this team didn't have in the backfield. It's a weapon they did have 2 years ago, until that weapon went off and ended up in Cleveland because of it. And I think you had the addition of Willie Gay, who I think will be an upgrade from Mississippi State as a linebacker. They did lose Kendall Fuller, but they have Patrick Mahomes. They got Hilaire. They got Tyreek Hill. They got one of the best tight ends in football. I mean, this team is loaded offensively. The question is on defense. And the thing is this, if Lamar Jackson can close that gap a little bit on Patrick Mahomes, I mean, Kansas City, up until the last quarter of last season, the defense was a problem. You've lost Kendall Fuller. And if you remember against the Colts, they had a hard time stopping the run. Against the Titans, they were behind early because they had issues stopping the run. And when your matchup is Baltimore against Kansas City, if you can't stop the run, you're not going to win that game. So when we look at this, I think 1 and 2 are close. I think the difference is number one's got the better quarterback. But if Lamar Jackson can improve, I mean, it's possible the Chiefs aren't the best team. I don't think that's going to happen where Jackson closes the ground enough to make a difference. But I do have a concern with the Chiefs being able to stop the run.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's killed teams in the past. It wouldn't be the first time we've seen a Super Bowl caliber team end up losing the playoffs because of their inability to stop the run. And we saw it hurt Green Bay last year. So you really need, if you're Kansas City, you need to sit your guys down, especially on the defensive line. Look, guys like Chris Jones, we know you're trying to play the pass rushing role here, but you need to be a little bit more focused on the running game this coming season.
All right, Sam, anything else we want to discuss before we wrap it up?
No, I think we covered everything today.
All right, guys, we'll be back at 1 o'clock tomorrow. Make sure you check me out at 2:30 with James Comerford, the CEO of Replenishing Care and Technologies, as he's on to talk about the PEMF machine. If you're an athlete, you'll definitely want to hear this. It's an amazing machine if you have any injuries or to recover or to just have better performance. Sam, tell everybody where they can follow you.
You can find me on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook at Sam_Teets33. I'm constantly posting new stats, polls, articles there every day, so feel free to go check those out.
All right, guys, if you want to hear the podcast form of this show, you'll be able to hear it later today on iHeartRadio, iTunes, TuneIn, Spreaker, Stitcher, Spotify. Wherever you find podcasts, you'll find The Grueling Truth. And remember, me and Sam will be here at 1 o'clock every day, Monday through Friday, to talk a little football. Hopefully we'll have NFL football this year, but who knows right now the way things are going in the world. But for now, for Sam Teets, I'm Mike Goodpaster. You've been listening to The Grueling Truth, where the legends speak.